How does one stupid-sized joke about my husband in front of our friends end with a process server calling my name in a crowded lobby? Why did comparing him to my ex for a laugh turn into court papers, frozen accounts, and everyone staring at me like I finally got what I deserved? What do you even say when the man you called small walks past you, calm and clean, while the legal result hits your hands? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. My name is Lenore Calloway, and I am tired of pretending my life is some sweet, perfect little marriage story. People look at our photos and think we are stable, serious, the kind of couple that never fights. They see his neat shirts and my smile, and our daughter on his shoulders. They do not see what I see in the kitchen at night when it is just us. It started small, like these things always do. He began to fuss over everything intimate. He worried about how long, how often, if I was happy, if I was satisfied. At first, I thought it was sweet. I told him he was fine. I told him it was okay. But you can only answer the same question so many times before it feels like a test you keep failing, even when you pass. That night in the kitchen, he asked again if I still found him attractive. He leaned on the counter, arms crossed, face tight. I was trying to make pasta and scroll my phone at the same time. I said I was busy, that he was reading into things, that I did not have time for another deep talk. He said he just wanted an honest answer. I told him he was overthinking like always, and that normal men did not need this much reassurance. He got quiet then, which is always worse than when he talks. I hate when he shuts down, because it makes me feel like the bad one. So I did what I always do. I turned it back on him. I told him I felt pressured, like I was under a microscope. I said he made me feel like a body part and not a person. That part was not even true, but it sounded right. He looked guilty, and I felt better. I mentioned my ex that first time by accident, or at least that is what I tell myself. I said something like my last relationship was more relaxed, that we did not have to talk everything to death. He asked what I meant. I said my ex never made me feel like a performance review. That was all. I left it hanging. I knew he would fill in the blanks. The truth is, my ex, Marco, has been in my head for a long time. We dated in my early 20s. Everything was loud and messy and fun. He never asked if I was satisfied. He just assumed I was. There is a kind of peace in that, even when it is selfish. With Gavin, everything is careful. He wants to plan, to check, to track. I know that should be good, but it feels small, like everything we do has to fit inside some safety box. Later that week, my best friend Cassidy texted that we should go out. Rooftop bar, cheap cocktails, girls' night. She said I sounded tense. I told her my husband was in one of his insecure moods again. She replied with eye-roll emojis and wrote that engineers were all like that. She said I needed a night to remember I was still that girl. I liked that. When I told Gavin about the bar, he asked who would be there, what time I would be home. I said I did not know, that I was not a toddler who needed a bedtime. He said he worried when I drank too much, that the last time I came home crying about something, he did not even remember saying. I told him he was policing me. I told him other husbands encouraged their wives to go out, to feel sexy. He said he just wanted me safe. I said maybe he just did not trust me. The funny thing is, he was right not to. He sat at the kitchen table while I got ready, watching me do my makeup. At one point, he asked if that guy from my past ever crosses my mind. I knew he meant Marco. My hand paused with the eyeliner. I said everyone thinks of their ex sometimes, that it is normal. I said he was being childish. He asked if I still talked to Marco. I said no, which was not a complete lie. I had only liked a few photos and replied to a story or two. That does not count. Not really. As I grabbed my bag, his phone lit up on the counter. A notification flashed, just for a second. Downtown 11:45 a.m. Personal. I asked if he was going somewhere tomorrow. He locked the screen and said it was nothing, just errands. His voice was flat. I almost pushed, but I was already late, and Cassidy was sending messages asking where I was, so I shrugged it off. I told myself he was probably buying something boring, like new folders or socks. The rooftop bar was warm and loud, full of soft lights and cheap perfume. Cassidy hugged me like we were on a reality show. There were 2 other friends from college, plus a new girl from her work. We ordered drinks, took selfies, and posted them before we even tasted anything. I made sure the angle was good, that my hair fell right. You cannot show people you are unhappy without also showing them you are still desirable. That is just basic online logic. Soon the talk turned to men, because it always does. Cassidy told a story about her boyfriend falling asleep during a movie, and the new girl laughed and said her guy was lazy in every area. It was half joke, half complaint. Then Cassidy looked at me and asked how things were down there now that Gavin was older. I could have changed the subject. I could have said everything was fine. Instead, I rolled my eyes. I told them he was obsessed with doing things right, like there was a rule book. I said he checked in too much, that it ruined the mood. They laughed. It felt good. Someone asked if my ex was like that. I said Marco was the opposite, that he was just sure of himself, and he did not need a spreadsheet. It was not the worst thing to say, but I saw the way Cassidy's eyebrows went up. She knew what I was hinting at. Drinks kept coming. Music got louder. I started using bigger words and bigger gestures. I said my husband wanted a gold star every time he touched me. I said it was exhausting. I said some men were just naturally confident and some needed a measuring tape and a trophy. It was funny. They laughed. People at the next table smiled like they knew exactly what I meant. On the taxi ride home, I scrolled through old photos again. One of them was Marco at the beach, wet hair, smug smile. I stared at it too long. My thumb hovered over the send button in our old chat. I did not press it. Not that night. It was enough just to feel that old pull, that reminder that I was once with someone who did not question his place in my bed. When I walked into the apartment, the lights were low. Gavin was in the living room, laptop closed, TV off. He asked if I had a good time. I said it was fine, just girl talk, nothing important. He watched me take off my heels and hang up my jacket. For a second, I wondered if he had heard anything, if someone had posted a story with sound. Then I told myself I was being paranoid. It was just a few jokes. No one ever gets hurt from a few jokes. The next big crack came a few weeks later, on a Saturday night, in a rented room at the community hall. Cassidy had decided we all needed a proper game night, with silly prizes and drinking games, and a speaker that was a little too loud for the cheap ceiling. She said it was to bring everyone together, but I knew she also liked any excuse to dress up and post photos. Gavin drove us there, like he always did. On the way, he asked again who would be there. I listed names like a school roll call, making my voice light. He asked if Marco would be there. My chest tightened. I told him not to be stupid, that I had not seen Marco in years. That was true in a technical sense. Messages do not count as seeing someone. Likes do not count. At least, that is how I chose to see it. The hall was already buzzing when we walked in. Tables pushed to the sides, folding chairs, plastic cups, fairy lights around the windows. Cassidy ran over in a bright dress and pulled me to the center, like I was the star of the show. She told Gavin he was so good for coming and not complaining. He smiled in that weak way he does when he does not want to make a scene. People kept handing me drinks. There was music, shouting, the clatter of cards and dice. Gavin mostly stuck near the snack table, talking to one of the guys about work. I saw him checking his phone more than once. The screen lit up, and I caught a glimpse of his calendar as he tapped. There was that same line, meeting personal on Thursday. It annoyed me that he had secrets but still wanted to question mine. Later, we all sat in a circle for a couples game. Someone had bought a cheap party deck of questions. The idea was to take turns answering embarrassing things. Cassidy loved it. She said it was good for honesty. I felt that hot little thrill, because these are the moments I am best at. I can make a room lean in. I know how to tell a story that makes me sound bold and him sound stiff. The question started harmless. Who said I love you first? Who cooks better? Who is messier? People laughed at the answers. Then one card asked who is more adventurous in bed. Cassidy waved it like a flag and insisted couples answer honestly. A few women rolled their eyes and joked about their boyfriends being boring. When it was our turn, everyone looked at me. I could have said we were equal. I could have smiled and kept it light. Instead, I felt this sharp need to push him, to make him feel how small his carefulness made me feel. I said, in a loud, fake whisper, that Gavin liked to read instructions for everything. People laughed. I added that, even in bed, he acted like there was a checklist, like he was afraid of doing it wrong. Someone asked, still laughing, if my ex had been like that. For a second, my brain told me to stop. That tiny, clean part of me knew the edge was right there. But I was already in it, with my drink and my friends and all those eyes. I said my ex never needed a manual. I said he was just naturally confident in every way. I let my hand move in a small, clear gesture, like I was drawing a line in the air. The room exploded with laughter. One of the guys choked on his drink. Cassidy clapped her hands and said, "I was terrible," in that laughing way that means she loves it. I did not say the word size out loud. I did not have to. Everyone knew. They knew I was talking about more than attitude. They knew I was comparing my husband to the man before him. That was the whole point. You do not drop hints like that for nothing. I glanced at Gavin. His face had gone flat, that dead quiet he gets. His jaw was tight. For a second, I felt something like shame, but it was small. I told myself he was overreacting, that we were all grown-ups, that everyone jokes about these things. Cassidy leaned over and whispered that I was brave for being honest. I liked that word, brave. I held on to it and let it wash away the uneasy feeling. The game moved on, but the mood had shifted. Some people kept laughing at everything. Others went quieter. I noticed Nina, who was there with a friend, looking down at her drink like she did not know where to put her eyes. Later, in the bathroom line, she told me the joke was a lot. I told her she was being uptight, that she did not understand our humor. She said she just hoped Gavin was okay. I said he was a big boy and could handle a little banter. On the drive home, the air in the car felt thick. Mia was staying with my mum that night, so it was just us. Streetlights slid across his face as he drove. He asked if that was really how I saw him, compared to my ex. I told him it was a joke. I said he was being dramatic. I said everyone laughed, so clearly it was not that deep. He said it felt like I had taken something private and held it up like a cheap meme for people to rate. He said he could not believe I would talk about him like that. I rolled my eyes and said men do that to women all the time. I said my body had been judged enough, and I was just evening the field. I said he was lucky I was still here at all, after everything, including my past with Marco. I made it sound like I had done him a favor by marrying him. He went quiet again. We got home and he headed straight for the bedroom. I stayed in the kitchen, scrolling on my phone, letting his anger cool off on its own. After a while, I heard the soft whir of the printer from the little desk we kept near the window. It spat out a few pages, then stopped. I thought he was just doing work stuff, like he always did when he was upset. When I finally went into the bedroom, he was sitting on the edge of the bed, a stack of papers face down beside him. His phone was on the nightstand, the screen dark. I kicked off my shoes and told him we were not going to do this whole sad routine. I said if he had something to say, he should say it. He told me he was hurt. He said he felt small and exposed, like I had built his worst fear and then showed it to an audience. I said I was tired of babying his ego. I said if he did not want to be compared, he should stop acting like he needed constant grading. I told him all I had done was tell the truth. That was the line that really landed. I knew it as soon as I said it. His eyes changed. He said if that was my truth, then we would both have to live with it. His voice was calm. Too calm. I did not like it. It did not sound like the man who begged for reassurance. It sounded like someone who had made a decision somewhere quiet and was now just walking toward it. Later, when he went to shower, I noticed his phone light up again on the nightstand. For a second, the calendar widget showed. There it was. Meeting, personal, repeating every Thursday afternoon. I picked up the phone like I was just moving it to plug it in, but the lock screen refused to budge for my thumb. He had turned off the shared fingerprint access we used to have. That stung more than I thought it would. I lay back on the bed and told myself he was being petty. I told myself he was probably talking to a therapist, or maybe a friend from work. I said in my head that if he was planning anything big, I would see it coming. After all, he was the one I always called careful and predictable. I had no idea that the real joke in that room was on me. Monday morning at the office, everything felt normal on the surface. Coffee machines, keyboards, people complaining about emails. Inside, I was still annoyed about the way Gavin had looked at me after the party. That calm, hurt stare. It clung to me like a smell I could not wash off. I decided the best way to shake it was to tell the story in a way that made me the one who had been wronged. In the break room, my co-worker Nina asked how my weekend went. She was just being polite, but I took it as an open door. I told her we had a game night with friends and that my husband had gotten weird about a joke. She asked what kind of joke. I left out the worst parts. I said I had teased him for being a perfectionist and mentioned my ex in passing. I did not say that everyone knew I was talking about size. Nina frowned and said that sounded harsh. I laughed and told her she was making it bigger than it was. I said my husband had a history of turning small things into big dramas, that he needed constant reassurance. I told her it was exhausting. I watched her face carefully as I spoke. Once I framed it that way, she softened. She said maybe he had some insecurity he needed to work on. I agreed, saying I always ended up being his therapist instead of his wife. It felt good to hear my version out loud, neat and clean. At my desk later, a notification popped up on my phone. It was from Marco, just a simple reaction to a story I had posted from the bar the previous week. A little flame emoji. That was all it took. My stomach flipped, then settled into a warm, familiar hum. I waited a few minutes, pretending to focus on a spreadsheet, then replied something light about missing those wild nights back in the day. He wrote back fast, said I still looked the same, said he could not believe Gavin let me go out looking like that. I smiled at the screen. It was reckless, but it also felt like proof that I still had value beyond being someone's careful wife. I told myself I was just flirting, that everyone flirts. It is not cheating unless you meet up. That is what I decided. By midweek, we were messaging regularly. Little jokes, memories. He asked if I still lived near our old gym. I said yes. He said he was working there as a trainer now and that I should stop by sometime. I told him maybe. It sat there between us, heavy and bright. That Thursday, Gavin's regular meeting personal alert popped up on his phone while it lay on the coffee table. I saw it when I passed by with laundry. He picked up the phone like he had felt my eyes on it. I asked again what the meetings were. He said they were just things he needed to sort out. I asked if I was part of those things. He said of course I was, but not in the way I thought. That answer annoyed me. I told him he was being dramatic and secretive. He said he was tired and did not want to fight. That night, I told Marco I might stop by the gym after work the next day. He sent a half-joking message asking if my husband would approve it on his spreadsheet. I laughed out loud at that. It felt like someone finally understood the joke. Friday came. I told Gavin I was going to the gym after work to work off stress. He said that sounded good and asked which gym. My heart skipped, but I kept my face smooth. I named a chain location near our apartment, not the one where Marco worked across town. It was only a small lie, I told myself. I said I would probably be late. He just nodded and went back to rinsing dishes. After work, I drove straight to Marco's gym. I did not even bring proper workout clothes. I told myself I might just say hi, check the place out, and leave. That way, if anyone ever asked, I could say it was nothing. He was waiting near the front desk when I walked in, arms crossed, smiling like he already knew how this story would go. We hugged, quick but not really. I smelled sweat and cologne. He joked about me still being out of his league. I told him my husband would die if he knew I was there. We both laughed. We did not stay long inside. He said it would look odd if we were just standing around, so after a few minutes of fake stretching, he suggested coffee. We walked out together. There were cameras in the parking lot, but I barely noticed them. I told him I had to be careful, that people already thought my husband was too controlling. Saying that made me feel like I had a reason to be sneaky. We ended up talking in my car with the engine off. It felt like being 22 again. He asked if I was happy. I said I was comfortable, which is not the same thing. I told him Gavin was safe, solid, but that he made everything feel small and careful. Marco said some people are meant for safe, and some people are meant for more. He did not have to say what more meant. It was in the way he looked at me, in the way his hand brushed my knee. When he leaned in and kissed me, I let him. For a split second, I thought of Gavin at home, probably making Mia's dinner, checking his calendar. I pushed the image down. I told myself this kiss was just a moment, just a test, just proof that I still could, that it did not mean anything. By the time I drove away, my heart was pounding, but not with guilt. It was with excitement. I told myself I would stop there, that I just needed that one reminder. I rehearsed what I would tell Gavin if he asked why I was late. Traffic, long workout, lost track of time. Honestly, he never checked that much. He only checked when I made him feel insecure. When I got home, he was in the living room with his laptop open. I kissed his cheek lightly, said the gym had been crowded. He nodded but did not push. On the coffee table, the tablet was plugged in, screen dark. Later, when I went to grab it for Mia's cartoons, I saw a tiny sync message on the corner. File uploaded successfully. I did not think anything of it. I had my own secrets now. I assumed he was just backing up photos, same as always. Things with Marco did not stop at that one kiss. Of course they did not. That is not how these stories go. We kept talking. Some days it was just silly messages. Some days it was heavier. He asked if Gavin knew I was unhappy. I said Gavin thought I was the problem, not the marriage. Saying that made me feel less like a cheater and more like some trapped woman from a movie. At home, Gavin changed in small ways. He did not shout or slam doors. He did not grab my phone or accuse me directly. He just went quiet and calm. Too calm. He started putting Mia to bed on his own more. He cooked more. He said less. When I tried to pull him into a fight, he would say he did not want to argue in front of our daughter. That felt like an attack, even though I know it should not. It sounded like he was saying I did not care about her. One Sunday, we took Mia to the park. She ran between the swings and the slide, hair flying, cheeks red. I tried to act normal, but everything felt stiff and fake. Gavin pushed her on the swings for a long time. When she ran off to play with another kid, he said we needed to talk. He said he could not forget what I had said at the game night. He said the words kept replaying, that it was hard to be in the same bed after that. I told him he was choosing to replay it, that he could just decide to get over it. I said it had been weeks, and I was tired of feeling like the bad guy for one joke. He reminded me that I had not really apologized, that I kept saying it was just honesty. I said honesty should be a good thing. He stared at me for a long time, like he was studying a stranger. Mia ran back then and asked why Daddy looked sad. I answered before he could. I told her Daddy was just mad that Mommy had friends. It popped out fast, sharp. She frowned and looked at him like he had done something wrong. His face changed, just a flicker, and he let it go. He pushed her on the swing again and did not argue in front of her. I told myself that proved my point. He cared more about image than truth. That week, his mother called and invited us to dinner. Elaine said she missed seeing Mia and wanted a nice family evening. I did not want to go, but Gavin said it was important. He said things had felt off and that maybe being around family would help. I thought that was a stupid idea, but I agreed. I liked looking like the reasonable one. At his parents' house, the table was already set. Roast chicken, potatoes, the whole thing. Tasha was there too, in her usual sharp jeans and messy bun. She hugged Mia and gave me a small, cool smile. During dinner, the talk was normal at first. Work, weather, Mia's school drawings. Then Tasha asked how our game nights were going. She said she'd seen a post from Cassidy that sounded spicy. I felt my face heating. I made a joke about how our friends loved to overshare. I said sometimes I forgot where the line was, and that I had told a dumb story that Gavin had taken too seriously. I laughed, like it was nothing. Gavin kept his eyes on his plate. Elaine looked from me to her son. She asked if everything was okay between us. I said, of course, that we just had different styles. I said I was more open, and he was more private. I told them he sometimes wanted to control how I spoke about our life, even with close friends. That word, control, hung in the air. I knew exactly what I was doing. I wanted them to see him as stiff and rigid, so I would look like the fun, honest one. Gavin finally spoke. He said he did not want to control me. He said he just did not want to be mocked in public by his own wife. He said certain jokes cut deeper than I seemed to understand. The room went quiet. I shrugged and said everyone joked about their partners, that it was normal, that they were acting like I had committed a crime. Elaine did not answer. She only looked tired. When we went to the kitchen to help clean up, Tasha followed me. She asked straight out why I thought it was okay to talk about her brother like that. I told her she was overreacting, that she was always protecting him like he was a child. She said there was a difference between teasing and humiliation. I told her she did not know what went on in our bedroom and should stay out of it. She said she knew enough from the way he had looked when he called her after that party. On the fridge, held by a magnet, I noticed a small yellow sticky note in Gavin's handwriting. Bring forms. I asked what forms. Elaine quickly moved a dish over it and said something about insurance papers. It felt like a lie. My chest tightened. I told myself they were just being dramatic and secret, like him. On the drive home, Mia fell asleep in the back. I noticed her booster seat seemed more fixed, like it had been adjusted to stay in Gavin's car all the time. It bothered me in a way I could not name. It looked like he was preparing for more regular solo trips with her. I asked if he planned to take her somewhere. He said he wanted to be ready in case he needed to pick her up from school or keep her overnight with his parents. He kept his eyes on the road. A few days later, my mother invited me and Mia over for dinner too. Ruth said on the phone that I sounded stressed. At her house, she set out my childhood plates like I was still a girl. She poured wine, even though I said I should not drink too much. She asked what was going on. I told her my side of everything. I said Gavin had become cold and distant. I said he made me feel like everything I said or did was a test. I told her about the joke at the party, but I softened it. I said I had lightly compared him to my ex, and that he had acted like I had stabbed him. I did not mention the hand gesture or the roaring laughter. I said he could not handle my honesty. I told her he kept mysterious personal meetings and locked his phone and his drawer. I framed it like he was the secretive one. Ruth shook her head and said men were sensitive, that they always wanted to feel like the only one. She told me I had to stand my ground, that if I started apologizing, I would never stop. She said I should not let him rewrite history and act like he was some victim when I was the one carrying the mental load. the work, the child. It felt good to hear. It made my anger feel righteous. My brother Eli was there too, sitting on the arm of the chair, scrolling his phone. He listened more than he talked. At one point, he asked if I had really said those things in front of a whole group. I said everyone drank too much and no one would remember. He did not look convinced. He said, "Friends remember more than you think." Then he asked, very quietly, if I was still in touch with Marco. I snapped that it was none of his business. He held up his hands and let it drop, but his eyes were sharp. On the way home that night, I checked my phone and saw a new message from Marco, asking when he could see me again. I smiled in the car's glow and typed that I was busy, but would try next week. Gavin drove, hands steady on the wheel, saying nothing. In the side mirror, streetlight slid over his face, and for a strange moment, I wondered what he knew and what he only suspected. Then I turned the screen away and told myself it did not matter. I still believed I could control which truth people saw. The shift in how people looked at me started in small places, like the supermarket. I was in the checkout line on a Wednesday evening, half focused on my list and half texting Marco under the cart handle. He was sending a photo of some new machine at the gym and saying I should come try it. I was smiling at my phone when one of our mutual friends, Kara, joined the line behind me. She asked how I was, in that stiff way that tells you she already knows something. I said I was fine, just busy. She said she had seen some of Cassidy's posts from game night and that the jokes about husbands had gotten wild. I laughed and said we were just having fun. She asked if Gavin was okay with being the punchline. I said he loved when I roasted him, that it was our thing. I said if anyone called it disrespectful, they did not get our humor. Kara did not laugh. She said people talk, and not in a nice way. She said some of our friends thought the way I spoke about Gavin was harsh. I felt heat rise in my chest. I told her people were jealous because my relationship had honesty, not fake politeness. I said men had made jokes about women's bodies forever, so why was everyone acting shocked now? She just nodded and looked away. That silence bothered me more than any argument would have. At home, I started noticing more little changes. The mail came in, and instead of tossing everything on the counter, Gavin sorted it into piles. Some piles went into a neat stack on the shared desk. Others disappeared into his locked drawer. One evening, when he was at the shower, I opened the drawer with the spare key I knew he kept under a bowl. Inside were folders, lined up in a row. Household, utilities, bank. They were all very tidy, with sticky notes and colored tabs. It did not look like a man just keeping bills straight. It looked like a man separating things. I felt a cold weight in my stomach. Then I told myself he was just being obsessive, like always. I said in my head that this was another example of him turning normal life into a spreadsheet. I put the key back and shut the drawer as I heard the water turn off. When he came out, I acted normal. I asked how his day was. He said he had been in another personal meeting. I asked again what those meetings were about. He said they were about getting advice. That word made me nervous. I asked what kind of advice. He said he was not ready to share everything yet, and that when he was, I would know. I told him that sounded controlling. He said he was just trying not to make empty threats. I decided to fix things my way. If I could get him to want me again, really want me, then he would stop acting so cold and careful. One night after Mia was asleep, I put on a nicer dress, did my makeup, and went to the bedroom where he was sitting with his laptop. I sat on his lap, moved his computer aside, and started kissing his neck. I told him we had been distant and that I missed us. I waited for him to melt the way he used to. He did not. He put his hands on my shoulders and moved me gently to the side. He said he was not in the mood and that he did not want to pretend everything was fine when it was not. I felt something snap inside. I told him he was punishing me. I said withholding intimacy was emotional abuse. I said he was acting like I was dirty when all I had done was speak honestly and try to have fun. He said he did not see it that way, that he could not just flip a switch after everything that had been said and done. He reminded me that trust and respect mattered. I accused him of only caring about his pride. At work, the atmosphere shifted too. In the break room, conversation would go quiet when I walked in. Nina still talked to me, but she sounded careful. She asked once if things had improved with Gavin. I said he was sulking and trying to make me feel guilty. I told her that if he left, it would be because he could not handle a strong woman with a past. She did not argue, but she also did not agree. She just said she hoped we would both think about what we wanted Mia to remember when she was older. I brushed that off. I told myself kids remember happy photos, not arguments. Marco kept pushing to see me more. He talked about weekends, about quick trips, about hotel rooms near the gym. I told him I could not leave Mia overnight, at least not yet. He joked that my husband probably had a sign-out sheet for when I was allowed to breathe. I laughed and sent him selfies from bathrooms and parking lots. Whenever I felt a twist of guilt, I reminded myself how small Gavin had made me feel with his constant questions, how he had pushed me into someone else's arms. It was not the full truth, but it felt easier to hold. One evening, Gavin came home early with Mia. They had been at his parents' place. I noticed Elaine had packed extra clothes for Mia in a small bag that stayed in Gavin's car. It looked like a set that was meant to stay there, not just for a one-time visit. In the hallway, I heard Mia tell him that Grandma said she could come over any time, and that they were making a special bed for her. My chest tightened again. After dinner, while Mia watched cartoons, I heard a strange noise from the little desk, a grinding, chewing sound. I walked over and saw Gavin feeding papers into a small shredder I had forgotten we owned. I joked that he was hiding secrets. He said he was just cleaning up old clutter, getting rid of things he no longer needed. I asked what kind of things. He said things that did not serve any purpose now. His voice was perfectly calm. It scared me more than yelling would have. Later that night, as he set his phone on the nightstand, I saw him adjust an alarm. I watched the screen from my side of the bed. The label flashed before he turned it away. Paper drop, 10 house AM. The words were simple, but they hit me like a cold wave. I asked what it was. He said it was a reminder to take care of some paperwork on his break. I asked what paperwork. He said it was part of the advice he had been given, and that it was time to handle things properly. I told him if he wanted to scare me, it was working. I said this whole secretive, mysterious act was manipulative. I said he was trying to control me by making me imagine the worst. He said he was not trying to scare me at all. He said he had been clear that he was hurt and that he could not live in limbo forever. He said he was done shouting, done begging, done explaining why jokes and lies hurt. He said the only thing left was to follow the proper process and let that speak. Then he turned off the light and lay on his side of the bed, facing away from me. The space between us felt wider than it had ever been. I reached out my foot to touch his leg, a silent peace offering. He did not move away, but he did not move closer either. I lay there in the dark, listening to the soft hum of the shredder cooling down in the other room and the faint buzz of his phone as some unseen message arrived, and for the first time, I wondered if he was already living in a version of our life where I did not get a vote. In the office tower lobby, a man called my name and pressed a thick envelope into my hands, while Gavin stood a few feet away with his lawyer. Inside was the divorce petition, screenshots of my messages with Marco, my jokes about Gavin's size, and a temporary custody plan giving him weeknights with Mia and freezing our joint accounts. Gavin nodded once, turned toward the doors, and walked out.